How do fractional CMOs hit the ground running? Hi, I'm Dean Way. Welcome to Fractional CMOs and the 90-Day Win. There's a lot of variety in how they kick off a new client engagement. In fact, with so much variety, it's valuable to just listen to what opportunities they look for, what they tackle first, and what they wish wasn't true when they start a new project. So let's find out. Wendy, imagine that you just started a new engagement. You're the fractional CMO. We'll talk about early wins in a moment. But first, what problems do you typically see, or what do you normally look for on day one? Oh, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Dean. Yeah, great question. I guess first, I'm Wendy Gratereaux, and I'm a marketing professor and fractional CMO, mostly for bleeding edge startups. I'm the very first marketing professional the company has ever had. So it's up to
Ah,
me to build their marketing infrastructure to get them started. So the very first thing that you have to look at is you have to assess everybody's capabilities. And you have to jump right in and think, okay, um, where are we lacking in certain elements that are going to be required to eventually maybe run campaigns? Do we have enough research? Have we done a market fit? Have we have enough resources? Is there anybody who's willing to be a thought leader? So just that quick gap analysis so the client can fully understand what they're looking at and what their road ahead is going to look like.
yeah. And Bill, what about you? Tell the audience a little bit who you
Yeah,
are
I
and talk about
yeah.
sort of the first problems you typically see, or what do you go hunting for when you're on day one?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. And I,
Sure.
first of all, completely agree with the gap analysis idea that Wendy just shared. A little bit about me, I often get asked that question. And so what I've come to introduce myself as is a recovering CMO. And the reason I say that is I've spent over 25 years in the trenches in operating roles for B2B tech companies, and all of them have been disrupting markets and creating categories. And it is a hard slog. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of things that you try that don't work. There's a lot of pressures from VCs and boards to grow at astronomical rates that
Yeah.
typically are not practical. And so I've learned a lot over the years. I've done everything in marketing, from field to channel marketing, product management, corporate communications, all of it. And I've risen to the executive level of been doing it for 15 years. I am now only a fractional, but I've been fractional for 7 companies now, and every one of them is different. And so trying to say this is the one thing that I do is hard. So I have a client now, and I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
What I do up front is identify, what is it that you want me to come in to do? And I ask a question. If I hit a home run, what happens? And it starts a conversation. So before I start, I want to know exactly what you think you need my help for. If I don't do that, I'm likely going to go in a million different directions because I'm going to get pulled in all these, everybody's pet project, and there will not be a win. You
Right.
have to start off with essentially, what is it you want me to go do? And it's always a 90-day contract for me because I can't do
Oh,
anything in less than 90 days. So in this case, they had 2 things they wanted me to solve. One, they wanted to reboot the brand. And number 2, they wanted me to put in a go-to-market plan that could get them on a certain growth trajectory over 5 years. And I asked a lot of questions, and I said, okay, then let me put together a contract with a scope of work that describes exactly how I'm going to do that for you. So in the scope of work is what I'm going to do in 90 days and what the win will be. I'm in the last month of that assignment, and I'm on track to deliver that plan, to reboot the brand, and to get them on a growth trajectory to meet their 5-year targets. But you have to do that up front. And it doesn't matter. I've been in an assignment where they wanted me to figure out how to go into a new market. I had to do a marketing sizing analysis. I had to do what are the routes to market? What's the go-to-market strategy? And I developed a plan to get them to help them get into a brand new market. Every assignment is different. There isn't a one assignment, but you have to define upfront what does success look like. And it's, for me, always a 90-day assignment, because if it gets longer than that, then it goes, what is Bill really doing? And you
yeah.
just don't want to get there, because then it gets into this notion of, was it worth having Bill come in? So I
Well,
applaud the question.
let's talk about some of the examples then. Stay with you for a second, then we'll go back to Wendy. So you've done this for, a long time, and now fractional for 7 clients, right? What are examples? If you're in the audience right now and you're looking at hiring maybe your first ever fractional executive, or certainly your first ever fractional CMO, like what are examples of early wins or low hanging fruit that
Yeah.
clients might want, or that you might recommend to them in the first 90 days?
Well, I will say there's patterns. Okay. I've seen
Hmm.
patterns, but they're slightly different. So typically it's very common for somebody to bring in somebody like me, and I suspect Wendy, because they're not hitting some growth targets. Okay. If they're hitting their growth targets, then they wouldn't need to even bring
Yeah.
me or Wendy in. Okay. So there's generally a demand generation question or issue or problem. And so in one company, I'd happened to leave one company because we sold it and it was a successful sale. And a competitor knew of me and they wanted to bring me in. In fact, they wanted to hire me. And I was not willing to jump back in. And I said, why don't you just have me come in on a part time basis? And when I sat down and said, what's going on? They weren't hitting their growth numbers. They weren't hitting their targets. And so when you dig into it, they had a demand gen problem. They didn't have campaign infrastructure. The gap analysis was they had Marketo and 3 other marketing automation systems, and none of them were live. They hadn't really sat down and built a funnel model to say, well, if you want to hit these targets, how many leads, MQLs, and everything. There was a fundamental disconnect between what marketing was doing and the growth targets because they hadn't done the work to figure out, well, how would you put in a campaign demand gen infrastructure plan
Right.
that would describe how you could get there and how you would get there quarter over quarter. That's one example, but it's pretty common that when I get called in that there's a growth problem. They're just not hitting their numbers. I've done that as an advisor where I was just given some stock and 5 hours a month or something, whatever it was, and they just wanted me to look at what the VP of marketing was doing, what was going on in sales, and give them my perspective on what I thought they might do differently. And then I got invited they let the VP marketing go and they asked me to help them recruit somebody. And so write the job description, be part of the team. They're all different. But a common theme, and I wonder if Wendy agrees, is generally there's a growth problem. They're not hitting their targets and they want to get to some sort of growth target they're not hitting. There's other things I see, but that's a commonality.
What do you find, Wendy? What kind of, or typically for your client engagement so far, like what are people asking for, or what are they trying to get to first?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Along the lines of what Bill has suggested, I found a lot with my engagements as well. I wish I was as lucky to get as many as established clients sometimes as Bill. Some of my clients actually don't even have a market fit for their product, where they didn't potentially do the due diligence prior to creating something that might be technically very cool, but the market might not be ready for it. So that I have seen as one of the biggest issues that I face in my screening. Much like Bill would sit down with them and see, hey, what do you expect from me? I'm like, okay, immediately off the bat, if there's no customers, they have not fumbled into getting some clients because they had cool tech and some established relationships. If there's really nothing, we don't know if people want the product yet. So just getting that traction in the marketplace.
Right. Your clients are very new, right? They're like brand new.
Yeah, or their project is new.
Right.
I have established clients that do recruit me to do some of this poking around in the dark. So it's making clarity from chaos, where we have to go in and start to identify who are those potential target markets and testing that value proposition. And is this product something that not only you're willing to take a risk on and using, but would you pay for it? And that is probably the biggest thing that I do get called into. Then the second part of that is I do stay with my clients longer than Bill does. I like the first 90 days to be that getting everything in order, organizing what we have to organize. But a lot of my clients do still really rely on me for that market leadership continuing on, because they just can't afford full-time VP, director, or definitely not a CMO with their budget. It would just gut their growth, right? So then it would be, what do we have to do to run a campaign once we get some traction? and get that repeatable process. So that demand gen that Bill was also alluding to. So building those funnels, what are the right tools that we're going to use to get this organized? And then once it gets up and running and we do get some traction, which is just amazing, you have different, you might have some different options after that.
Bill tried to escape, but we got him back. Okay, so I like that phrase of poking around in the dark. So let's go a little further along that line. So okay, you started engagement. What do clients normally not see or know about their marketing or marketing in general until you start working with them?
I think that you get so caught up with the cool factor of the tech or the product or whatever you have, right? The service that you created, that we sometimes lose track of, do people want this? Right? And we forget the customer and we forget that they're people. And are people willing to make a change? A lot of, if you look at consumer behavior and the ones that actually do make that change, is the pain great enough with their existing options to be willing to take a chance on you? That is an opportunity cost for them. Not a lot of people want to make that change. So who are those, identifying those people, and which organizations would be willing to give you feedback on your product, test it out? That's a big ask of people these days.
Yeah, let me chime in. I 100% agree with that. One of the things that I always do, and whether or not I take a full-time role, or because even when you're interviewing a full-time job, there's so many things that you don't know. You can't do enough due diligence to know everything that's going on. So my litmus test is, give me 6 customers to talk to. I want to talk to 6 customers, and I want them to be meaningful customers that have had experience with the product. And the reason is, and I've said this to people, CEOs and founders, I hear what you're saying. As a marketing person, I need to know what the market is saying. That's where I find out. That's how I do poking in the dark, is by talking to the customers. I just did it at this client. And I'm finding out some really interesting things. And I write the notes up and I share the notes. And I'm going to accumulate them and put them in a PowerPoint presentation and say, here's who I interviewed, here's the questions, and here's the summary of what they said. Here's my takeaways. Let's discuss, what does this mean for us? Because there's so many things you learn from just taking the time to talk to the market, to the customers, okay? And it's been astounding what's happened. In my last company where I was full-time, I started as a fractional, and after 6 months, by the way, I agree, 90 days you can't do anything. Generally it's 6 months or longer. 90 days just makes it easy for them to get to know me, and likewise. But when I did that and I said, this is what the customers are telling us we should be doing, it changed the strategy. It literally changed the strategy. And we went down a different path, because I said, look, if that's what these are some of our biggest customers are telling us, shouldn't we listen to them and look at the strategy? And the CEO and the rest of the executive team said, yeah, we should go down that path. But I don't know how to do it without research. And my research is basically, I want to talk to customers myself. And I say, and I don't want you in the room, because you're going to end up coming in and you're going to challenge the signal I'm getting. I want to ask the questions, and I will tell you exactly what I hear. That's how
do you identify yourself as the CMO or the fractional CMO in that
I just
scenario?
tell them I'm coming in to help the company.
Okay.
And I've been hired to come in and help the company. And I'm very transparent. I don't think what I'm doing.
Nope. I think we might have had a connection issue there for a moment.
Yeah.
I think we're back.
Where?
So you tell them that you're here to help the company. So basically you're leveraging the newness, and I'm not yet inculcated in the company's culture yet. And so I want to talk to people and see what's really happening kind of approach. I think we lost Bill again.
Oh no.
Uh-oh. Well,
I can chime in for a minute till. Oh, there he's back.
Sorry, guys. I know you're going to edit this. I must be having some network issues. I don't know.
You'd be surprised how little editing I'm going to do on this.
Okay. Well, anyway, yes, I'm completely honest about who I am, because I don't believe
Yeah.
I worry about hurting the brand of my client by pretending to be somebody I'm not. And I in fact told the CEO at this company, I just want to
Right.
position you as the fractional CMO or whatever to employees and everything. I said, let's tell them who I am and what I'm doing, please, because integrity is so important to me in the whole process of doing this that I don't want to pretend I'm somebody that I'm not. And so I found that that's worked. I mean, and customers are very, by the way, they're going to share the good, bad, and the ugly. And I turn around and I share the good, bad, and the ugly
Yeah.
because we need to know the truth. So
Yeah, and if I can contribute
Yeah.
to that, Bill, I love that you do that. That's actually something that if I'm lucky enough to have at least some traction or somebody have used the product or even similar products and maybe did a demo and didn't purchase, I have to try to find those people that will give me raw, unfiltered feedback. I record those sessions as well, and I sometimes get the actual snippet of phrases that I think are monumental, and you will look right into the company's eyes of each of the leadership team. And when they hear their words, the customer's unfiltered feedback that wasn't influenced, and when they feel very free to talk, it can completely change the direction. Just like Bill was alluding to, it is a very powerful thing, and I try to do at least 5 if I'm so lucky to get at least 5 right.
Yeah.
And I don't
Okay.
introduce myself,
You don't
as I
what?
yeah, I don't introduce myself as anything
As
other than a
mm,
fractional CMO. I do go right into those engagements, with that title. Maybe it's because that's just how I felt more comfortable with, letting them know that I'm here to really figure out the strategy, get to the bottom of things, and I'm not a permanent fixture. I'm here to help fractionally, as an external, source. And maybe I think maybe it has to be more personal, like what you feel most comfortable with positioning yourself and
right.
it feels more authentic to you. So far, that's the only way that I felt authentic when introducing myself to external or internal, people at the
Yeah.
organization.
Well, let's go internal for a second, Wendy. Like, what do you think a CEO should understand about a fractional CMO to get maximum value out of you?
Yeah, I think they need to remember that nobody it knows all, right? Like even I come in and I know the parts and I know the strategy, but I'll never know their business or the product or their services like they do, and I'll
Mhm.
never understand the things that they know because they've been doing it usually for decades, right? So it's where our minds meet, and if we can have that healthy
Mm.
exchange and work collaboratively. On the ultimate plan is where that's where the magic's going to happen. If you hire somebody with some kind of preconceived notions that you know exactly what they should be doing and um, you have set some arbitrary goals because you read a blog or you heard somebody's podcast. I mean, pun intended, but you force that onto somebody when your situation is not the same, right? Every variable is different. Every situation is a little different. So you might have to adjust a few things to get to the place that that other company is at, right? So the strategy that you need uh, likely wouldn't be the same that the company that you were trying to benchmark or you were looking to follow into the marketplace.
What do you think, Bill? Anything
yeah,
else?
I
What else
agree. I
should a
mean,
CEO
yeah.
understand to get maximum value out of a frac CMO?
Well, okay, a couple of things. One of the things that makes marketing exciting, but also makes it challenging is if you just do what everybody else does in a market, you don't stand out. And so you can benchmark yourself against competitors and look at everybody and do this lookalike thing. But the real way that you end up creating value is finding the seam between where what are not the competitors not doing that you could do that would be innovative, that would get your brand out there in a way and get people wanting to talk to you. This is happening to my client right now, and I
Yeah.
don't want to share too much about it, but I came across this notion, and I said, hey, I'm thinking to myself, is anybody in this industry? It's a complete competitive industry doing this, and poking around, but I don't see anybody doing it. And then I think to myself, well, this is an industry And I'm even talking to the customers and I go, what do you think about this idea? They go, that's a really interesting idea. I went to the CEO and I said, what do you think? He said, I think it's a great idea. And I don't see any of your competitors doing it. He goes, I think we should do it. And that isn't something you get from benchmarking. It's by the years of experience and me just talking to a lot of people in a lot of different places and going, I've seen it work in other industries. I think we could apply it here, but that isn't an obvious answer. That was something that me trying to think out of the box and going, what aren't we doing that we could do that the competitor isn't doing that might do something that to kind of be more creative, more clever, and outsmart them. And I think that's part of what makes marketing fun. It's hard, and it's challenging because and I'm going to recommend we do it at this client, and I'm going to go research. I said, well, first let me research it, and it's going to take effort and it's going to take resource. Let me scope it for you. But there's a risk associated. It could fail.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I don't remember.
Anything can fail, right? So you got to take chances, and marketing is about taking chances and trying to apply creative thinking and trying to think out of the box. And sometimes that's not doing the obvious thing and benchmarking and just saying, well, they're doing it, we should do it, because that sometimes won't get you the outcome you want, right?
Now, what do you think, Bill, some of the signs are that like this company should not have hired a fractional CMO in the first place?
Well, first of all, in technology-driven companies, it's all about the technology, right? The product should sell itself.
Yeah.
And why do we even need marketing? And so
Right.
when I get a sense of that and they're not willing to listen and appreciate my experience and, so no matter what I do, and I'm constantly getting questioned and I don't even get a chance to put forth the ideas, it's pretty much a red flag that it doesn't matter if it's me and everybody's going to
Right.
struggle. My last company, they had 3 or 4 people before me and they wanted me to come in, and I knew the CRO, and I said, I won't take it because I don't understand why 4 people left. They're not all of them could be that bad. And so I said, I'll tell you what, it's a try before both of us buy, try before I buy and before you buy. And they said, okay, fair enough. And I came in and I did do it because what I talked to the customers and what I found out was the strategy that they were advising I could do. They believed in the product. There was no product that did what we did. It was a big market opportunity. And I thought, I think I can, with the credibility I've done by doing the hard work, talking to customers, doing the research and proposing a plan. The CEO said, I will support that plan. And we grew the company over 5X. But when you I sniff out, it's a technology company and some really smart engineer that's smarter than me is building technology I can't even understand, just doesn't want to have anything to do with marketing. And I'm just there as a figurehead. It's a red flag for me. And I would say, maybe there's somebody else because it's too hard anyway. And, you want to have people who are going to be on your side. And,
When I was
and you want them to be
working in
supportive
new
of you.
product development I spent my whole corporate career in tech companies. One manager at one point, and I don't think it was an original thought, I'm pretty sure it was a quote from someone else, where we mostly worked in software and in tech companies. He would look at products that we were trying to spin off or products that we were trying to develop. And he said, just because there was a gap in the market doesn't mean there was a market in that gap. Right. And so it's one thing to say, let's just build it and then figure out how to sell it. And it's quite another to say, like, does anyone actually want this thing? Well, actually pay it for it.
It's kind of back to Wendy's point. I call it the technology looking for a problem to solve. And I was at a company like that, and we killed ourselves for 3 years, and we had, we got a bunch of proof of concepts, and the board, a good board, said, I think this is a strategic investment. And we basically said, could you sell the company? And we did, and we sold the company. The technology was good, and it found a home in a bigger, as part of a bigger technology stack. And once it found its home in a bigger company that could embed that technology into the stack, it took off. And it was just great technology, but it wasn't a standalone. And sometimes you just have to learn by getting out there and, I'm saying that's why I'm a recovering CMO. It was really hard. That was a pre-revenue company, by the way. It was a really hard 3 years, and we sold it because that was the best place for that technology to live, And so
Wendy, how
that
about
happens.
you? What do you think are some signs that they shouldn't have hired a fractional CMO or weren't ready for one?
Yeah, I think the weren't ready for one is a really good a phrase, because I think they have to get there. If they can get a little bit more traction with market fit, at least somebody being willing to go out there and talk to potential customers and being the evangelist of the company. If you don't have anybody willing to talk about your product, who is like, I put my flag in the ground, this is my product, and they're willing to evangelize their product and service, it's really hard for me to come in there and fabricate that belief and that hope, right? You need that leadership. And if you're the CEO and that's not you, that's okay. You potentially have to lean on a founding co-founder, or find another leadership counterpart. You're probably not ready. When you hire somebody who is a fractional CMO, you are either diagnosing a issue right in your funnel. Maybe your sales were good and now they're failing or dropping, or the competitive landscape has changed, or you're launching a product, but you also have to be ready to do the things that you need to do to establish market fit, get some traction on the marketplace, and be willing to invest. A lot of times people come to you too late. And I don't know if, Bill, this happens to you as well, where they waited too long to invest in their strategy and their marketing. The marketplace has been infiltrated, and so many other products or solutions are so far above and light years ahead of them. And for them to just do like a superficial rebrand, it might not be the best strategy. So they might not need somebody to get them to a place where they can run campaigns and do demand gen. What they might need is more of what Bill was recommending, where you change your strategy and just exit the company. Maybe, be a part of like a larger organization, which we can also help navigate to a degree. But just having that expectation in mind that it could be too late. You waited too long to invest into the company's growth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Look, the VC model, if we're talking about VC funded companies, right, and not the company I'm working for now is privately the family business, but still, a very viable business, successful business, right? The model is that 1 out of 10 might be a Google, the rest of them won't. 3 out of 10 might give you a positive return. That means 7 won't. Mm-hmm. So the whole model is built on high risk investing where there's going to be a lot of failure. Mm-hmm. And one of the things to do is just recognize that and say, hey, this might have been a really great idea, but it may not be one that's going to ultimately give, the investors and the employees, a really big win. And so rather than beat your head against the wall and hope, it might be better to change the strategy. And that strategy might be completely repivoting, which companies have done. It might be go find somebody else to take the technology and hopefully do something with it. Mm-hmm. But, we can only do what we can do, and you just got to get in, try as hard as you can, iterate, test, do your research. But then you got to take a step back and go, what is the market telling us? And then what do we do now? But to just keep going in there and just hoping that it's going to turn out is, just doesn't fit the realities of high risk businesses. And so then you just have to figure out, okay, what do you do? And Wendy, you're 100% right.
Yeah. Okay, so last hypothetical before we wrap up here. So the CEO comes to you. Doesn't matter how long you've been there, but like you're a fractional CMO. The CEO comes to you and says, "Hey, you and me, we're going to vet and select the next head of sales. There's no head of sales right now. What are you looking for, or what are the green flags? What are the red flags?" Wendy, you can start, and also let people know how to find you.
Oh, great, thanks. So you can find me at growdigital.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Wendy Gratereaux. My name is up on the screen. I'd love to connect with you if you're interested in learning anything else about what we've been talking about today. So hiring and recruiting, I'm sure Bill has also done tons of this in his career. But you really need somebody who knows how to embrace both the marketing strategy and understands what it means to sell the certain products or services and add value to the organization. Green flags would be somebody who's done it before at that type of company. There's so many times where we've tried to hire people that have worked at large corporations and they were a cog in a big wheel or a big machine, and they just don't understand the scrappiness that you need in a startup and the strategy and
they thought they were going 100 miles an hour. It turns out the train was going 99 miles an hour and they were going 1 hour.
Yeah. And it's like, the amount of the speed of iteration and the, hey, that was a bad idea, let's go, let's move on, and not getting so personally wrapped up into a few leads that you're chasing that really aren't a market fit. Right, those are established like enterprise purchasing companies. We are not an established product or service yet, so they're not going to risk it on us. So do they see that? And other red flags would be, do they not value marketing? Because marketing helps color that story. Do they just want marketing to feed them leads? Are they going to be part of that creative process? And who are we targeting together? What are those pitch? What's the value proposition? Are they willing to collaborate with those hooks and strategies? Like if they're going to go to an event, an association, trade industry, are they willing to look at that event and structure that pitch so it's more impactful and meaningful to them? Or do they just want to quickly get it done, same old pitch that they use on every single client? It's always the same because they don't have time or can't be bothered to think strategically. So for the people that are willing to think strategically, it's a huge return on their investment to start at like an early stage company. They get to be part of the ground, they can explode their career. And that takes a really dynamic person who has a lot tools in their tool belt, and they're just ready to show you what they can do.
Bill, picking a new head of sales, green flags, red flags.
Yeah,
And
so I
tell
had
people how to reach you.
Yeah, so first, go to LinkedIn. You see my name, Bill Odell. I'm easy to find. Everything you want to know about me,
No apostrophe.
or no apostrophe, or Bill at Odell Marketing. And very simple, and happy to talk to anybody. Look, I actually had the pleasure of going into sales, and I did it from sales operations to running inside sales to running a region and to running sales at a B2B tech company. And at that company, I was part of the recruiting of a lot of salespeople. And I would tell you, Wendy's right on. You're not going to get the $1 million a year person that's making that kind of money at a company. First of all, you can't pay them. And second of all, they're going to come in with an ego and expectations you can't meet. So you're kind of left with trying to get the best that you can that will fit your company at the stage you're at. And so what we tried to hire were athletes. These were people that were smart, they were ambitious, they didn't have to rely on a whole lot of process and a lot of unbelievable expectations on marketing, because marketing can't deliver all of that at certain stages. We just don't have the money. But they're willing to work with marketing to make marketing better, but they're just hungry and they're ambitious and they want to get to that $1 million type of a year rep. And we would try to profile it left on the characteristics of the individual. And did they meet the profile of being scrappy and tenacious and willing to learn and willing to work with uncertainty and not a lot of structure? And did we think that they could get into that level? That's what we found was the formula. It was not coming from the big. If they came from a big company, great. But it was more of, are they an athlete? Was the profile. And the other thing we learned is that if you get somebody in there and they're not a fit, it's better for everybody to just part ways than to try to make them work, because you don't have the luxury of grooming people. You have to get people in, and can you produce enough? You got to churn them. And this is what Oracle did really well in the early years. And that's a mistake. You talk to anybody in the VC talent teams that try to advise the CEOs, is you just got to, do they work? They don't work. Even if the executive, they don't work, churn them out, get somebody that's going to work, because holding on to people too long, sales is critical. You just can't do it. It's even better for the salesperson. Find a better home for them, because they're not going to be happy sitting there with you trying to make them successful. So we liked athletes, but we also, hey, if it didn't work, churn them and try to find somebody else.
Yeah, we used to say that such and such a person, it was often just like a context, right? They were in the, I spent a lot of time in sales, some time in sales, and also in sales engineering. Like they didn't have wheels, which is to say, my boss says, some people, they're great at selling in one environment. You bring them into the wrong one, they don't have wheels. Not having wheels means they don't move unless they're pulled or pushed.
Can I add just one more little bit about that? Okay, so for the bringing those people in, and I love that you do athletes. Like I do sometimes say, like, those people that know what it takes to win, but can figure out the win in any environment, and those do happen to be athletes. So like a team mentality, and they know how to play as an individual and contribute as part of the team as well. And then when you if you're not working out, it's pretty obvious from the get-go. You don't have a lot of wins at all. But you might have a lot of wins in the beginning and then have some failures. That doesn't mean it's not working out. That meant that it's early stage company and there are failures that you're going to have. But if you have no wins and only failures, that's probably a problem. So it is normal for that ebb and flow. And to just pick yourself up quickly from any failures or any conflict or any rejection. And can that person dust themselves off and get back out there and be successful again? That is that grit, that tenacity.
Yeah,
That is
today's
really
loss is not tomorrow's loss. Today's loss is just today's loss. Tomorrow we do
yeah,
it again. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's all our time. Thanks so much, guys. You guys were sounding fantastic about this. Like if if there's anything else you want to say or remind people how to get in touch with you, that's great. And then we're going to wind this up.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you, Wendy.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Bill, too. Yeah, I mean, looking forward to seeing the show.
Yeah, me too. Right, Bye.
Thank you, guys. Good luck. Bye.